Hello and welcome to the Fiction in Translation Festival. Tonight we're going to be talking about Yuko Toshima's book Territory of Light. This is actually one of my first and favourite chalkboards I did because I don't know if you can see it, how well you can see the cover, but I never loved it. I don't know that there's that much to it. There is a child in the book, but there's no heart-shaped balloons, and this sort of bland cityscape film photo, it just doesn't do it justice. Not when city and place is so at the heart of her book. And there are many images that stay with you in this book, but in particular this one of the ocean rooftop, which I shall read later, is really wonderful. So the book is about a woman who is recently split up in the process of getting divorced from her husband, and for the first time in her life is finding agency. It documents the year between her leaving her husband and her moving on, if you like, in some sense. She has a young child and it's absolutely stunningly beautiful. So I'm going to begin with a little reading from one of my favourite. Once you got the door open, the apartment was filled with light at any hour of the day. The kitchen and dining area immediately inside had a red floor, which made the aura all the brighter. Entering from the dimness of the stairwell, you practically had to squint. "Oh, it's warm, it's pretty," my daughter, who was about to turn 3, gave a shout the first time she bathed in the room's light. "Isn't it cosy? The sun's great, isn't it?" She ran around the dining kitchen as she answered with a touch of pride, "Yes, didn't you know that, Mummy?" I felt like giving myself a pat on the head for having managed to protect my daughter from the upheaval around her with the quantity of light. I'm going to talk about light in Territory of Light. Surprise, surprise. But I think that extract highlights what you might think is obvious, that light means freedom, and that she's finding for the first time light out of darkness. She finds this new apartment and it's full of light and it's bathed with light, and we get these repetitions of light in her descriptions of the apartment throughout the whole book. And in some ways it is. It definitely is to do with freedom, and it is her first experience of bathing in the light, you might say, from a dark period of her life that definitely has been her time with her husband. However, it's not quite that simple. I actually think that rather than light being personal growth and growing towards the light in the way of a plant, which she is doing, I think that light in this book is much more in the sense of light at the end of the tunnel. And going into the light, because she comes really close to death. Not physically, she's not unwell, but she comes close to sort of breaking point. She doesn't know who she is, what she's doing. She starts doing everything wrong in her life. She finds that she doesn't do basic things like picking up her child from school. I think she has a lot of regrets about having had a child at all, and she sort of says, "I didn't realise I had chosen to have a child. I acquiesced, I got married, it all sort of happened very quickly." She's very lonely, she's very bored, and she's going up to this top floor of this apartment, where this apartment is, and I think just as much as it's raising up and out, it's also up and out and towards the sky and towards departing from this world. She's not really in and of this world. And then at the very end she comes back down, and I think that is really how light plays a role. She ascends, and then at the end of the year, when she has a little bit more control and a little bit more safety in her life, she comes back down into the streets of the city and to be a part of the world. Throughout the book, there's been these reoccurring deaths that are very tragic and mentioned offhandedly, So that's what's referred to in this extract. There was another blast, and a new red glow lit the night sky. By now I'd forgotten my fear. The entire sky had a sunset tinge, a shower of sparks glimmered, and to the right a burst of light surged like an animate thing, while around it the sky was flushed with the lingering glow of the second explosion. The streets too were reddened by the sky. A fourth and a fifth explosions followed, a little smaller, then everything fell quiet. The array of colours, however, was growing in complexity and beauty. Instead of crying, "How about having a look? I've never seen such a pretty sky. It's fantastic," I tilted my daughter's face up to the sky. "Oh, Mummy," though still clinging to me, she gazed open-mouthed. The tear stains on her cheeks were reflecting the red light. Once the blasts died down, the colours gradually faded, beginning furthest from where the explosions had occurred. Although we waited, there was no more to come, and the sky steadily darkened. We stood on the roof until the sky returned to its original colour. We were both shivering. In the paper the following day, I read that a small chemical factory quite a distance from our building had exploded due to spontaneous combustion, causing several fatalities. It occurred to me that the glow in that night sky had perhaps signalled the last of the deaths that had been happening around me. People had died in that light, died in an instant I didn't doubt. I had the feeling that I finally understood what the series of deaths had been trying to tell me, the light of heat, of energy. My body was fully endowed with heat and energy. I couldn't help but see myself standing there last night, transfixed by the glowing red sky, never sparing the approach of death a thought. I would just like to read what is definitely my favourite bit of the whole book. So what's happened is there has been some water that has been leaking through the building of the apartment floor that they live in. She's come back from work and has been rudely accosted by a man who was demanding where she's been, and then the manager of the whole buildings, who are desperate for her to arrive so they can see if it's her flat that the water has been coming from. So she asks them to wait outside, and then she comes back into the stairwell. I reported the discovery. The man was raring to go. "No, excuse me, would you mind not going in there? Let's have a look on the roof. Didn't check the terrace this morning." I led them hastily to the inside stairs. The thought of anyone seeing my unmade futon left out on the tatami made me tense. There was nothing out of place in the bathroom. I opened the door that led onto the rooftop and was the first to cross the threshold. I let out a cry of astonishment at the sight that met my eyes. Where there should have been a perfectly dry roof, water rippled and sparkled, a great expanse of clear water. "The sea, Mummy, it's the sea, wow! Look how big it is." My daughter plunged in barefoot, laughing to herself in merry peals. She paddled, splashed with her feet, scooped with her hands, dipped with her face. On her, the pool was ankle deep. The three of us traced the flow to the building's water tower. Water was spurting from it in a mesmerising jet. "It arrives at the drain over there, and the overflow must have been seeping downwards," said the estate agent. "It must be getting through a little crack somewhere." But what a view! The man from the third floor, also awed, perhaps had completely regained his composure. Well, well, we can count ourselves lucky to have got off so lightly downstairs. Look, your little girl is having the time of her life." My grandchildren loved to paddle too. The two men gazed at my daughter frolicking, their eyes lighting up with pleasure. "But you were directly underneath. Surely you heard something." At the agent's remark, I remembered for the first time the sound of water in the night, that gentle, distant sound, a sound that would be revisiting me in my waking hours. I felt a chill, as if I'd been caught off guard. "Now that you mention it, I did hear something. But then this morning, when I saw the sky so clear, somehow I didn't—" "Oh, really?" said the man from the third floor. "If you'd only dealt with it then, we could have repaired it right away." I bowed my head and apologised lamely. Having agreed that the men would come first thing in the next day, the two went on their way. That night I took off my shoes and had a high old time in the rooftop sea with my daughter. Though there was no way it could be dangerous, it was a little unnerving to venture into the expanse of water, and the uneasiness gave me a thrill. We splashed each other and played tag till we ended up soaked. The air was chilly on wet skin. However warm the days might be, it was still only the beginning of May. She talks about ringing her husband and reflects on that for a little bit. And then the next day, they wake up and the repair work is being done. The next morning, the repair work was over in no time. The rooftop was emptied of its transparent water before our eyes. My daughter spoke for me when she told the repairman indignantly, "Don't stop the water. Meanies, I hate you." 2 days later, a Sunday, the roof was mended, a job that took all day. In the evening, on learning the work was finished, I went up for a look. We'd been warned to keep off the surface until it was completely dry, as I reminded my daughter repeatedly on the way up the stairs. When she opened the door and saw the rooftop ahead of me, she let out an even more piercing squeal than when she discovered the sea and began to make a commotion. Muttering, "What's the matter?" I poked my head out. I couldn't believe what I saw. The whole surface was a bright, shining silver. Its dazzling sheen hurt the backs of my eyes. I had thought they were just going to fill the cracks, but they had painted every inch of the roof with waterproof paint. If it was this bright in the spring, by summer it would be unbearable. The glare would burn our eyes here in the midst of a city, as if we were crossing a snowfield or adrift at sea, a silver sea. I would highly recommend this book. You can pick up a copy at Green Ink Booksellers, who I have linked all over my promotional stuff for this. Josh and Ellen are very lovely. I would highly recommend, even if you now don't fancy this book, maybe my reading was absolutely shocking, then please go to them and pick up another book you fancy. When I was doing this chalkboard, I really wanted to, I played with having this as the silver waterproof membrane that reflected. I tried using like an electrical paint because that was just what I had around, but it came out duller, and I feel like maybe it would need to be almost as shiny as a mirror. Maybe it would need to be the waterproof paint itself and have direct light shining on it at all times. So I went with the sea because it was a little bit easier. So yeah, I hope you are intrigued, and I hope I have given you something to think about, as light as both a light of freedom and growing into the light as both destruction, and maybe we all at different times in our life climb up into the light, remove ourselves from the world, and then hopefully come back down. Thank you very much.